What's going on, everybody? Thank you very much for tuning in. This is AJ, your host of the Blue to Green podcast. On this episode, I sit down with Mr. Brad Miller. Mr. Miller is a United States Marine Corps officer. He's a lieutenant colonel. He is an attorney. He has worked on both the prosecuting side and the defense side, and he is also running for a political office here in the state of Arizona for the Pinal County Attorney's Office to be their lead person that leads the agency. So on that note, I just want to state that this conversation with him is not a political endorsement of him in any way, shape, or form. It's just a conversation. I want to give everybody from every party, I'll sit down and talk with anybody, the chance to explain their philosophies, ideas, their thoughts, their leadership in a long form content as opposed to a little snippet you see. So obviously this particular episode will be much more of a local type thing, but that's also something that we talk about is how important it is for all American citizens to be involved with politics at their local level. The reason I was able to sit down with him is because he left a flyer on my door. I sent him an email and we were able to sit and talk. So it just shows the importance of actually having one-on-one conversations with your local people, your local politicians. So I hope you get something out of this podcast. He explains so much more about what the attorney's office does and is responsible for. I think linearly in a law enforcement mindset, and often forget, like even with the attorney's office, there's so much more that these elected officials do. So if you get something out of this, great. I hope you like, comment, and subscribe. You know, all the cheesy stuff you got to say to keep the algorithm happy. But let me know what you think. Take care. Thank you.
He threw some things out of the car, right there. He's throwing some things out the passenger side. They're along the wall, the slow lane wall. 619, he's throwing dope out the window. We got bills of marijuana coming out.
619, I copy bills of marijuana coming out of the window at 2328.
Oh, nice.
All right, Mr. Miller, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
So if you just want to go ahead and just give an introduction as to who you are and what we're doing here.
Sure. My name is Brad Miller. I'm running for Pinal County Attorney. I'm excited to be here just to talk about philosophy. I think talk a little bit about my career for your audience to get to know me, who I am, where I come from, and just appreciate really, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but appreciate somebody doing local interviews. And I think that's extremely important. So many podcasts are focusing on national issues, and a lot of people don't
pull it a little closer to you.
A lot of people don't realize that it's
that will be so much better.
Okay.
There we go.
A lot of people don't realize that it's the local issues that truly affect us.
Agreed.
Are on our daily basis, much more so than national races.
Agreed. And that's one of the things where I'm part of a political organization, and I didn't realize that until I got involved. And I also didn't realize how many people are not involved in their politics.
Yeah, they're not involved, and they don't really know some of the local candidates, or that these people will reach out. Some of the local candidates, I can text, I can call, and they'll answer very quickly. I have a meeting with our local congressman here this week, and they're very responsive.
Well, and that's exactly how we're sitting here.
Yeah.
I literally had a flyer on my doorstep, and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to give him a text message. Yeah. So let's go over that real quick.
Sure. You
are running for Pinal County Attorney. What led you to the path of where we are now, and why we're sitting here regarding the law, you're into the law school and all that stuff?
Sure. I think one of the biggest issues that I saw, I grew up in Sacramento, California.
Okay.
And so out of high school, I was recruited by Intel Corporation to start working for them. I was working in their IT department in Folsom. And at that time, I was going to a local community college and eventually went to Sacramento State and started studying. So I was going to Sacramento.
Technical difficulties. I apologize.
That's all right. Good? Okay. So I was going to Sacramento State, and the things that I was learning in school did not comport with a lot of my views. It was kind of in the infancy of the DEI movement, of affirmative action movement, and some of these other political issues that I did not agree with.
And how old were you when you were at this time?
So this would have been in about 98, 99.
Okay. So we're roughly the same age.
Yeah.
So you're just developing who you are, and what was your upbringing? Was it conservative?
Yeah, conservative upbringing. My father was a roofer.
Okay.
And so I would go out with him on the weekends and roof houses with him.
Okay.
And on the way to roofing, we would talk about two things. This is what he wanted. He didn't want me to be a roofer, number one. So we talked about Wall Street and what blue chip stocks were. We would read the Wall Street Journal together.
Okay.
And the second thing is we would listen to Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, nice.
That was big. Very, very influential.
Did your dad have any background in that, or did
Nothing.
he just want better for you, and that's what he decided to do?
That's it. So he had a high school education. Okay. His father was a roofer, and he just said, "Don't do this. We want you to be on a different path."
Understood.
Yep. So we would talk about these things. We would talk about how to invest in the stock market. He didn't have any money, so it was theory.
Okay.
But we talked about all of these things.
Okay.
And so it became very influential. We would debate different issues. And I think one of the biggest things, we didn't always get along. And of course, I didn't always agree with Rush Limbaugh. But I think the biggest thing is we were able to talk about them and discuss them and argue about them, have differences of opinion, but still move on and love one another. And that's one of the things that I learned, even in my college courses, is I had no problem debating with any individual or being friends with another person with completely different views than I did. But I love talking about the issues. Even if we just split amicably, we just went our different ways and we couldn't come to any type of consensus. No. I loved the idea of the argument. I love the idea of the debate and engaging of ideas, because I think it's through engagement that we get better ideas and better understanding of what government should be.
I 100% agree. Yeah. And that's the world that I live in, is the dichotomy of the left and the right, and the art of amicable debate has been lost in this day and age.
Yeah. Not only amicable debate, but we don't even talk.
Right.
I think that's the saddest part. So that's kind of leading into one of the reasons why I'm running for county attorney. But I think it's very sad that Democrats and Republicans and liberals and conservatives and leftists and Marxists can't get together and talk about these issues.
I've said the same thing, is that, like, look, I'm a free speech absolutist. Yeah. I 100%, you should be able to spew whatever hatred you want to spew. I can spew whatever I want to spew. But at the end of the day, we should be able to agree that we're not going to commit violence on this. We're just going to have a difference of opinion.
Absolutely.
But right now, the world's kind of a crazy place. So
it is, and I think some of that has to do with the top level discourse. But the people on the ground, I don't see as divisive as I think what's reflected in the news.
I agree 100%.
So I'm in the Marine Corps, and so obviously people have differing views. People think we walk in lockstep. That is absolutely not the case. We have people from all different backgrounds, from the South to the North to overseas. I serve with a lot of people who are not even U.S. citizens.
Okay.
And we talk to these folks all the time. We have fun, exciting debates, and guess what? Then we go out and grab a coffee or have a beer, and we're good friends. And I keep up with these individuals, on a weekly basis.
Nice.
And we rib each other about our views.
Yeah, of course.
That's the thing I think is missing, is that we can make fun of each other for our views or for who we voted for or whatever the case might be, and it's fun. It's still enjoyable to engage, and I think that's the piece that's missing.
It's not taken personally.
No,
I'm not that politician. No. My views are just my views. No. It's I don't understand whether it's left or right, following somebody to the death. Mm-hmm. I don't understand that mentality. I also don't understand following a party to the death. Yep. Excuse me. I do. Like, I'll say it here. I think RFK is an amazing candidate as an independent. And the other thing that's so lost right now is that you have to be in lockstep 100% with the person that's running. Yep. Otherwise, well, clearly they're an idiot. Yep. It's like, well, we can still have differing opinions and maybe waver. I don't want to agree with everybody 100%.
Exactly. And I don't think we truly do. And I think if you say you do, you're probably either negligent or you're probably lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's that certainly is what's missing. Just because I vote for a candidate doesn't mean I believe everything they say 100%. I may have one or two issues that I think are more important during this election or that election, and I vote in accordance with that.
Yep.
But I certainly think we should have the debate.
100%.
Yeah.
So California, going to college, not really liking the scenery there.
Yeah, it wasn't just the scenery. It's exactly what we're talking about. There was no debate to be had. So I would say, I have a different view on, one of the things they would teach is we need to level the playing field, whatever that means.
Okay.
And this goes back to a core philosophy of mine, is I think government most of the time is the problem, not the people. And so the leveling the playing field doesn't mean that social scientists are leveling the playing field. It doesn't mean that interest groups are leveling the playing field. It's government has to level the playing field in order to make it okay.
Okay.
That's the problem, is that when government gets involved, they typically mess things up.
Right.
And I think that I am much more of a Lockean than a Hobbesian or a Rousseauian, in the sense that I think we need to have limited government and that people should be able to make the decisions that they want. Government's job is to protect my rights, not to protect the government.
What I don't understand about this, we're obviously talking complete politics here. So Democrats, and I'm going to use big, broad, general terms here. Democrats want the larger government. They want the more control, more government span, more government control, more government oversight, and tax. And Republicans generally want the smaller government, the smaller limited government. And I don't understand where the world that we're living in. Show me a government program that works good right now, that works well for the people, that works as intended. You want to tax people, fine. But what are you doing with the taxes? What are the people getting for the money? I mean, we're funding 2 wars. So, we must be overtaxed somewhere.
Exactly.
But where's the money going? And that's, just kind of the core of, I would call myself, I'm fiscally Republican and socially Democrat. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your political views are. I do care if we're talking about kids.
Sure.
We're gonna care, but what grown ass adults do is what grown ass adults do.
No, absolutely. I'm probably very similar in that sense. But I actually disagree with you on one point. The point you just made is I don't think that Republicans or the Republican Party has become the party of small government and Democrat has become the party of big government. I think this is where the problem lies. I think the two are starting to merge in the sense that we have a uniparty out there that is seeking full control of government. And that's my biggest problem, is the reason why I'm running. Yes, I'm running as a Republican, certainly, but as a small government, constitutional, conservative Republican. And I think, unfortunately, I need that label, is that my ideas and my philosophy is smaller government. I will fight Republicans and I will fight Democrats for that position.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think that logic makes sense. I think we're seeing on the political or on the lawyer side of the house, correct me if I'm wrong, you can have a defending, a prosecuting and defending attorney, and in the courtroom they appear as though they're against each other. Get behind closed doors and they're buddy.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of the exact sort of thing that's happening in politics right now. It's all the same.
But here's with one big caveat, is that with prosecution and defense, because I've been on both sides, is that you can be buddy, but you advocate for your client in court, vociferously. And I think that's your job. But there's nothing, I don't see a dichotomy between being friends with somebody and arguing with somebody. And I think that's appropriate.
It's adversarial, which is a good thing. Your adversaries, not enemies, in the courtroom.
On the issues, not against the person.
Yes.
And I think one thing is we need to do is separate those things. Is separating the person from the issue. And I think that's one of the other things that we're losing in some political discourses. We're attacking the person.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
agreed.
it's on both sides. The Republican Party, we have candidates out there attacking the personalities or the individual instead of, let's talk about the issues, because that's what I care about. One of the things, I've been on various campaign stops all over the county, and it seems interesting to me that people are looking for personality, not issues. I vote on issues, not on personality.
I gotcha.
You might be a really nice guy and very outgoing, but if you're wrong on the issues, I'm probably not going to vote for you. I look at the issues. How does this person think? What is their philosophy? What are they going to do? Because when you get into office and when you're put into a position of authority, there are issues that are going to come up that are unplanned. What are they going to do then? And I think 2020 was a big wake-up call for a lot of folks.
Agreed.
And then we had to look at, what did our government officials do?
And we need to hold them accountable.
Absolutely, which is why I'm running. Yeah.
So what are the core issues that you're finding? Let's go back to law school. Where'd you go to law school at?
I went to law school at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Okay. So then you said you're in the Marine Corps, hence the United States Marine Corps t-shirt.
Yep.
I just so happened to put on my Till Valhalla project one.
Yeah, I knew you were a veteran, so I thought I'd wear this today.
I believe this is a Marine Corps. I said I never went overseas. I always make that clear I never did combat, but
I didn't do combat either. I'm a lawyer.
But you're not a veteran. You're active.
I'm a 4-time veteran, actually.
Oh, okay.
So you're officially, under federal law, you're officially a veteran once you receive a DD-214.
Yes.
And I've received 4 of those.
Well, and people don't understand that when you go back in, you did not re-enlist. You were an officer. You are an officer.
I am. Yep.
So what is that process called? Because it's re-enlisting for us lowly people.
Not lowly. You're the ones that do the work.
I agree with.
It is that kind of interesting, because that is the case with all infantry. So in the Marine Corps, we separate things into 3 different types. You have you have ground, air, and law. That's
Okay.
it. With the air and law folks, the enlisted support the officers.
Okay.
With the ground folks, that includes logistics, infantry, all of the others, it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
The officers support the enlisted.
that
So
makes
it's a little
sense.
bit backwards. But my path was, so I graduated law school in 2007.
Okay.
Came out to Arizona, took the bar exam. My wife and I moved out. We were broke. We had nothing except everything in our Ford Escort and a 3-month-old child.
Gotcha.
We'd been married for a couple of years prior to that.
So right before the big recession out here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess everywhere, but yeah, the housing recession here was insane.
Insane. So we didn't expect that, but anyway, we
Right.
moved. We literally came to Arizona with no place to live.
Okay.
Luckily, by the grace of God and some friends, they allowed us to stay in a casita until we could find a home, which was a couple of months later. So we were able to purchase a home. At that time, I started working for a tax law firm out in Tempe, and I did that for a little while. Did not enjoy it. I mean, I learned a lot, but it wasn't the type of law that I was interested in practicing.
Gotcha.
So I immediately applied to the Maricopa County Attorney's
Okay.
Office and started working for them in 2008.
Okay.
Yep.
Very cool. What did you do with MCS or MCAO?
So I started from the ground up. I've done almost, I wouldn't say every job, but almost every job.
Okay.
So I did IAs in the 4th Avenue jail.
Okay.
I worked the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift.
Okay. What years were you there?
So 2008
Okay.
till 2017.
We absolutely crossed paths.
I'm sure
there.
we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what was the type of law that you wanted to get into?
I wanted to get into trial work
Okay.
because that's what I did during law school.
On prosecution or defense?
So at that time, I was focusing on prosecution.
Okay.
So I'd done an internship at a prosecutor's office in California, and then I'd done a internship at a civil law firm.
Okay.
And at that point, I was kind of leaning either way. I wasn't sure what I was going to do.
Civil law, like accidents,
Civil
type
law
stuff?
regarding like civil rights
Okay, okay.
litigation
Gotcha,
and other
gotcha.
types of litigation like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I applied to various jobs, and to be honest, the tax firm was the first one that called me back. We were broke.
Gotcha.
We needed something to do. And my background is in finance.
Okay.
And so I thought it would be a good fit. Maybe they get into litigation. I don't know. People think that in law school you learn the law.
Right.
You do, but you learn mostly theory. At least we did in my school. So we learned so much theory. Once you get into practice, it's like eyes wide open, deer in the headlights. I have no idea what I'm doing. And, I've taught and had the opportunity to train a lot of young lawyers, and I tell them, you basically know nothing. So let's start from ground up, and we're going to build on this. And so I think one of the benefits, I think that was the other thing, is with the tax firm, I didn't get some of that foundational training.
Okay.
So when I moved to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, it was foundational training, because guess what? You have to start from the bottom. And that was such a fantastic thing for me. Very good office. I know people didn't like what was going on at
Right.
the top, but I didn't see that because I'm a brand new lawyer.
Right.
You don't see the politics of what's going on with Andrew Thomas or whatever the case might be.
Right. You were at the JP level, probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're at the JP level doing DUIs,
Yep.
domestics, all that type of stuff.
Yep. And then I moved to, and this is what really I think jump-started my career. I moved into handling juvenile prosecution.
Okay.
And the idea of juvenile prosecution is not punishment, but rehabilitation.
Okay.
And so that was the first time that had changed my thinking. Again, I'm young at this point, 25, 26,
Okay.
or maybe 28. I don't know, somewhere around there. So I'm still young, thinking we got to prosecute everybody.
Right.
We got to hammer everybody. We're going full bore at everybody, throw the book at everybody. And it really changed my view of how to handle a human being.
Okay.
Sometimes we look at people as inanimate objects, something to be controlled or pushed around or told what to do, or you're not worthy, whatever the case might be. It changed my view completely on what the criminal justice system should be and can be. And so we really sought to rehabilitate these individuals to try to integrate them into society.
Okay.
And that was the first time that I started thinking about that. I had a fantastic mentor at that time. I think she still works there. And I couldn't have asked for anything more.
What are the services that are being done for juveniles?
Very similar to the services you see for adults.
Okay.
So obviously it goes all the way up to something like Canyon State where they get incarcerated. But you have drug rehabilitation
Okay.
places. You have family issues. So you have the whole dependency courts. You have people getting mentors, AA, all of those types of services that you would see in an adult situation.
I have said for years, from my law enforcement experience, from personal, friends and family and all that, that if we could just fix the trauma that happened in the childhood, we would have far less issues.
Yeah.
Whether it's domestic violence, whether it's child sexual trauma, whatever the case may be.
Sure.
If we could fix those issues, this world would be a much better place.
No, I totally agree. And I think doing that, it was one of those things where it was not a sought after billet.
I'm sure it's a terrible job.
I will say this. I really appreciated it once I got in there because of my experience growing up. I grew up in foster homes.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't a foster child, but I told you my dad was a roofer. He didn't make a lot of money. So my mom on the side would clean homes.
Okay.
And because she had to cart her 3 kids back and forth to school and to practices, I played football and baseball and did all of those things. The only homes that were available for the hours that she needed were foster homes.
Okay.
So I spent my formative growing up years speaking to children and kids, they were my age at that time, about trauma. It was not an unusual event for me to talk to a child who had just been stabbed by their stepfather 13 times. It was not an unusual event for me to speak to somebody who had just been prostituted out. So I literally experienced and spoke to these folks, or that was born a crack baby, or whatever the case might be. And so I would go into these homes, speak to these kids. They seem normal to me because this is part of my growing up experience.
Right.
We'd go play with them, swim with them, take them to baseball games. I have 100 stories that I could possibly tell about these circumstances. And growing up, having those thoughts and formulating those ideas about how to experience trauma. Now, we saw it on the other side too, where children were ripped from their homes because of false accusations.
Right.
And so we see both sides. And that's the interesting thing about government is I think we've lost some of the dichotomy, is that we do operate in the areas of gray a lot of times.
Yes.
And we have to be hard and soft at the same time.
Especially in this day and age where there's a lot more acceptance and focus on mental health.
Yeah.
There's a lot more acceptance and focus on why did this person do this? And I the same as you, when I was younger and in law enforcement, hammer everybody, the law is the law, boom, you're getting the max. And now in my softer, older age, I'm like, people need help. They need resources. They need, assistance and, just navigating life and finding the best resources for them.
Absolutely.
So,
and like I said, I literally experienced it, saw it, spoke to them, was around these kids all of the time, hearing their stories, and some of them would break your heart.
Yeah.
Absolutely break your heart. And those are the experience that I had growing up, which is why being in prosecution was extremely fulfilling because I was able to work with victims. So I was a prosecutor 2008. And then, so I was 28 at the time. I worked at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for a couple of years, but they have a program under federal law and under the Maricopa County Attorney's Office where they will allow you to go on active duty in the military and then get your job back right when you come back.
Okay.
So I took advantage of that program.
Gotcha.
The Marine Corps will not allow you to join at the age of 30. So I was 29 at the time.
Wow.
Yep.
They're young on their numbers.
Very much so for their officers. Yeah.
Wow. What about on the medical? Just real quick side question.
So we don't have medical in Marine Corps. It's all
that's
Navy.
right. It's all Navy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So those are different ages, but for officers going to OCS, it was 30 years old is the cutoff. So I was 29 at the time.
Gotcha.
My wife and I just had our second child. She was, I think, 4 or 5 months old. And I looked at my wife and I said, if I don't join now, I will never have the opportunity to do it. And I thought I would get pushback. And she says, no, this is something we need to do. And that has always been very, very special to me.
That's very cool.
Is that she was a part of it. Absolutely, 100%. Yep. So let's see. I signed up. It would have been October of 2009.
Okay.
And then I was shipped to Officer Candidate School in Quantico, Virginia in January of 2010.
Okay.
So that program is 10 weeks, and it's different than the enlisted program.
Right.
The officer program, the purpose is to make it so difficult you want to quit.
Gotcha.
They will allow you to quit at any moment, any time, for any reason. They have plane tickets sitting out ready for you to take. That's it. They don't ring a bell. They don't cheer. They will literally, they tell you, we will escort you in the middle of the night so you don't get embarrassed by your buddies.
Wow.
That's it. And they would often line us up and say, it's time. I think some of you need to quit. I think you need to leave. And, a lot of people took the bait.
Head games.
Yeah, absolutely.
All playing head
Big
games.
time. So it was a fantastic experience for me. I learned a lot about myself and what we could push through. because at that time, Quantico were in the winter. So I go from Arizona, where it's 80 degrees, and immediately we got dropped into 20. And the first day, I wouldn't call it humiliation. We call it incentive training.
Okay.
So they immediately put us in shorts and a t-shirt, and we had to go run outside in Quantico, Virginia.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I'm a native Arizonan. I love my heat. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So you said you had played sports as a kid.
Yep.
So, but just at the age of 20, I'm assuming you had to have stayed in some decent shape before you went into there. Because
Absolutely.
My only experience is officer and a gentleman. So,
Yep.
That's my only take on the OCS course.
Yep. So it is tough for sure. I wouldn't call it, certainly would not compare it to SEAL training. Wouldn't call it the Delta training. It is what it is. It's a training ground to get officers to quit, to see what they're going to do in difficult circumstances. A lot of hikes, a lot of work in the water. There were oftentimes they had to break the ice for us to get in.
You were doing cold plunges before it was cool.
Yeah, forced cold plunges. So it was a fantastic experience. So that's 10 weeks, and then you become a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. And then immediately all officers, no matter what their military occupational specialty is, goes to a thing called the basic school, which is infantry school.
Every Marine's a rifleman.
Every Marine's a rifleman. They truly believe that. So it's 6 months of learning to be a rifle platoon commander.
Wow.
Yep.
That seems like a long time.
It's
they're investing a lot in you.
Yep.
Because they want you to be on the law side, but that's cool though.
Yep.
The Marines, man, 100% hats off. Your guys' culture and spirit of corps and everything is unmatched. That's why you guys, there's no recruiting issue right now.
Yeah, we're the only ones that don't have a recruiting problem.
Yeah, the Marines that are in my life now are the best people on the planet. They just truly are.
Yep. I mean, it goes back to General Mattis: "No better friend, no worse enemy." Yeah, we truly believe that. It is an ethos that is truly ingrained in us, and I think it gets ingrained through these schools. You have to live with these guys, eat with them, sleep in the same areas of them, and it was just another fantastic experience because I hadn't seen anything like that. Remember, I told you I grew up. My dad was a roofer,
right,
and so we coming from Arizona. Learning all of those skills was great, not only for me personally, but also for my family. No. So, my wife at the time, the plan was for her to stay in Arizona with our 2 children. And she said, no, family is too important. So she drove herself across country. And every so often during OCS, again, this goes back to the mind game issue, they would give us liberty.
Right.
2 to 3 hours out to see what your young officers are going to do. And they would entice you with whatever was out there, they would entice you with because they wanted to see if you were going to fail, what you were going to do in those moments.
Integrity.
Absolutely. And so some guys would go get drunk. Some guys would do whatever they wanted to do. For me, I would spend those couple hours with my wife and kids and then immediately report back early and then it was game time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's all a mind game.
It is. It really is.
It's the sort of thing where I wish I had the mentality that I have now to go back and do those things because maturity, we're like, well, it's just a game. My body can't handle anything like that now. No freaking way. But yeah, like if I was to go through basic training again right now, I'd be like,
yeah, exactly.
Easy.
Exactly. Especially the mind game piece.
Yeah.
The physical piece is a little bit different.
Yes.
But we would have college athletes out there who had played football for Navy or whatever the case might be, and they'd get broke off.
Yeah.
They just weren't mentally prepared for it.
It's grit. Mm-hmm. It's that mental toughness. It's that grit. It's that the internal, personal perseverance and mental fortitude to get through things.
One of the things that they would do is we'd go out on like a 12, 15 mile hump with 60, 70, 80 pounds on our back, raining, of course. And then about
cold.
of course, very cold because it was Quantico. But we would get probably 6 to 7 miles in. They would say, all right, drop your packs. Guess what we're doing? We're having an exam. We would have our exams in the field under a red light. And again, if you failed the exam, you're out.
Wow. So high academic standards as well.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Under stress.
Under stress.
Cold.
Yep. They want to see what you would do. So that was a very good training ground. So after that 6 months, then I went to Naval Justice School, which is in Newport, Rhode Island, for all of our naval training. And at that point, we integrated with the Navy and with the Coast Guard.
Okay.
As all the sea services trained together, and we conducted our version of law school, learning the UCMJ process and all that.
is there any maritime law that's involved in that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, is that kind of why all the sea
Absolutely.
the sea people?
Yep. Well, not only is it just the sea services trained together, but we operate together very often out in the field. You know, we're with the Navy all the time. You know, I was just down in Colombia.
You guys are the men's department.
Yeah, I won't say that, but
I can say that.
Exactly. But
all views are personal on this podcast. So
exactly.
My views.
So the Navy have fantastic officers. They're good people. So, but we integrate all the time with them.
Yeah, of course.
And so we need to be thinking on the same page. Obviously, they handle their Navy centric stuff, and the Coast Guard does their own thing. But we are together often.
The experiences I had was in Intel, and Intel throughout the military is all joint services.
Absolutely.
I worked Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines everywhere I went. We didn't have any coasties.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was maybe somewhere, but but it was joint services, and it was neat to see the differences between all of them.
Yep.
It was very cool to see. Man, you Marines though, you Marines. I had a watch officer that just looked like he was going to eat me every time. Every time I'd have to go because I was a shift supervisor. So, but anyways, enough about me.
No. I agree. I mean, it's a hard culture.
Yeah.
But we take our job seriously. You know, we're typically the youngest, and we also have the lowest ASVAB scores of all the services.
Okay.
But what they're able to do in taking a young man or young woman and turning them into something that has ethos and faith and belief, and what they can do with their career and with their life is something that I don't think any of the other services can replicate. And it's absolutely fantastic. I've met so many great people, been able to train with so many great people and mentor and be mentored by various people. It's a fantastic family.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you work your way up through the ranks. You go in as a butter bar, second lieutenant. So then how fast do you rank up through that process?
Yeah. So the way it works is, so after Naval Justice School, you get your first duty station. Mine was Camp Pendleton. And then you get your first job assignment. Mine was...
I apologize for asking this. You went in full active duty? What
Yes.
the thing was? Oh, I apologize. I thought it was some sort of like reserve program or something like that. You went in full active duty.
Active
Gotcha.
duty.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, active duty. So I went on active duty, was sent out to Camp Pendleton, and then you get your first assignment.
Okay.
And there's various billets that you can be a part of. I was put into the billet of trial counsel, which is a prosecutor under the UCMJ. And what's interesting is, again, very Marine Corps, they don't do this in any of the other services, is they immediately give you extremely high responsibility cases. So my first day, I was given cases involving child sex crime, rape, some high value theft cases, and some other things, and immediately thrown into this fire. And I knew at that time I was not equipped to handle some of these matters.
Okay.
So this goes back to my time at MCAO, which I'm very, very thankful of the people there. I had met, so during some of my training, so one of the things they do is the Marine Corps and the services understand that they can't provide all the training that's necessary.
Okay.
So they'll send us to other schools. I had the opportunity to go visit the National Advocacy Center out in South Carolina.
I've been there.
Yeah, you have?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've been there.
Okay.
The one that's on USC?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So they have a whole prosecution clinic out there. And most of the time, it's just the federal prosecutors that go there. But at the time that I went, state prosecutors were able to go. And of course, military. So I went out there not knowing what I was going to learn or the people I was going to meet.
Right.
So I went out there just hoping to soak up any information because I knew I had this huge amount of responsibility on my shoulders. And I met a woman by the name of Rachel Mitchell, who is now the Maricopa County Attorney.
Correct.
And so we got to talking, and she said, I can see you have some problems. I think she felt sorry for me. And she said, if you need anything, call me personally, and we will help you. And I took advantage of that.
Nice.
I immediately called her. And at one point, I drove one of my NCIS agents from San Diego to Phoenix just to staff a single case.
Wow.
And she sat there with me for hours with her entire sex crimes team. And we went through all of the issues that I would be running into. And I received such fantastic training. I'm very, very thankful for her and for her team. And so they sat there with me, helped me understand the situation, and really grew me up very, very quickly to become a prosecutor in the Marine Corps, which led to me, after I got off active duty, to go work for her at MCAO.
That's a ton of information and knowledge to sit there and soak up and get.
Yeah.
That's a ton of experience.
Yep. It was a really good experience, but it was tough, but it was good.
Yeah.
So we handled some really, really tough cases, including a Chief Warrant Officer 5 who was trafficking children in Afghanistan. We handled, like I said, shaken baby case, spousal rape case. I don't want to get into the particular details,
Totally
but they were very, very difficult. And there's always a military wrinkle on some of these matters. Like, for instance, a spousal rape case. Say for instance, if the military member is prosecuted and sent out with a dishonorable discharge, then their spouse also loses benefits.
Oh, okay.
So they're essentially testifying against themselves financially.
Yeah.
And so that can be really, really tough to convince a spouse who has gone through such pain and this goes back to domestic violence cases. It's convincing them that your testimony is essentially going to be taking away your health care for life and your entire pension. Are you willing to do that?
Do you think that's a fair system?
No.
Okay.
No, but that is the system.
Yeah.
And I think some of those things are changing now. I don't know the specifics, but it's something that certainly should change to protect victims in those circumstances.
This is where I fall back on why is a domestic violence happening? Now, again, I want to live in a utopia in my head where we can take that person and we can fix all of the issues and fix all of my issues, because I'm definitely a work in progress. But, what's the source of the domestic violence? What's the source of the alcoholism? Is it trauma, PTSD, depression, whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
That's, I'm big in my old age now on finding the root cause of what's causing these issues and I think, working on that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the appropriate response. I mean, there's been a huge shift in how the military handles mental health issues. I mean, it's certainly out in the open. A lot more leaders are talking about this.
Good.
Getting services. The chaplains are involved, and we have a lot of services available. But that hasn't always been the case.
Right.
I mean, it was looked upon very negatively. But yeah, you go back to the alcohol issue. For a lot of those situations, they are just covering something up.
Yes.
Same thing with illegal drug use.
Yes.
I'm assuming we're going to talk about marijuana and other things eventually, but it's certainly anything that can help can also be abused.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the issue, is that are they using it to cover it up, to push it away, whatever the case might be. A lot of these issues people have to deal with, and it can be very, very tough.
And that's, yes. And it's not the drug, it's the relationship to the drug.
Absolutely.
Again, it could be food, sugar, caffeine, any of those drugs, up to and including alcohol. I mean, most abused drug in the world is alcohol.
Absolutely.
And I've got enough sitting in the cabinet 10 feet away from us that could kill 20 people.
Exactly.
It's like, that's just on the cannabis issue. I drank the Kool-Aid for years through the department, but I didn't look at it as harshly as most did. Mm-hmm. So I was much more lenient. But now, again, that I've moved on, and I've been an advocate with veterans, and I'm part of an organization that's a advocate, and talking to these people who get the mental health benefits. It's like, again, it's just the relationship with the drug. Yeah, I could sit and smoke all day long and be stoned out of my mind and doing nothing, or I can be using it as proper medication and getting through the back pain and all that good stuff. It also makes you way more creative.
Yeah.
So, but when used responsibly.
Yeah.
So,
but you have to remember, we came out of a situation in the Vietnam War where it was not used responsibly.
Right.
I mean, we sent all of these soldiers off to Vietnam with Dexies, like amphetamines in their regular pack.
Yeah.
They came back addicted to heroin and marijuana. You can read the stories. I've read the stories numerous times of various soldiers saying that 75% of their unit, while patrolling, was stoned out of their mind.
I'm going to push back on the word addicted to marijuana.
Okay, that's fine. Which part?
No, just the term addicted to marijuana.
That's fine.
Is there a mental addiction to marijuana? Yes. Is there a mental addiction of, I want to get high? Yes. But there's not a physical addiction to it. You know what I mean?
You don't think there's like a physical need or want that your body can need that substance?
I think it would.
Is that what you're saying? I
think that that you could become much like cigarettes. That's what your withdrawal is going to be like.
For sure.
You know what I mean? You're not. Well, what I'm saying is you're not going to have the DTs like alcohol or anything like that. You're going to be a little irritable. Now, you can overuse. There is cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which causes excessive vomiting. And again, I'm 100% for responsible use, but there's the term addicted to. It's like you're going to be irritable for about 24 hours, and then you're going to be like, and then you're going to move on.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a mental addiction, 100%. Yeah, I want to get high. I want to, whatever the case is. So, and then I also differentiate very differently about being medicated and being stoned.
Sure.
Two very, very, very different things in my eyes.
So what I'm specifically referring to, just so you understand, is that my information is coming from the news stories of the folks on the ground.
Yep.
Is that very often they would go out patrolling and seek marijuana for the purposes of getting stoned, for the purposes of checking out of the war, because they knew the pointlessness and the hopelessness of what they were doing.
I agree with that.
That's what
100%.
I'm discussing.
Yes.
Now, obviously there's varying degrees of what that looks like.
Yes.
But you can see reports on the ground of these various individuals coming back, and they did have obviously some withdrawal symptoms. There were also miscategorization of how deaths occurred, or issues of anxiety, PTSD, memory loss, all of that stuff. And I think that we've done a disservice to some of those folks in how we've categorized them. People looked at a Vietnam vet coming back and said, you're a broken individual. You are the problem. And it's like, well, look at what we did by sending them in a hopeless situation. I mean, look what we learned from the Pentagon Papers, how the war was conducted, why it was continued.
Right.
It can create a sense of hopelessness.
It was based on a false flag operation to begin with.
Yeah. And it's crazy. I mean, again, you can read the reports of the folks on the ground, is that by the late 1960s into the 70s, many of the soldiers on the ground were so disillusioned with the war that that was one of their ways of checking out. Now, I'm certainly not categorizing it, throwing a broad brush over all that, but certainly was some, and it wasn't a few.
I agree with you 100% on that issue. But what they didn't realize is they were also smoking really terrible weed back in the day. So they would have to be smoking a mouthful. But no, I do agree with you. And again, that's that relationship to it. Their relationship was to just get stoned and numb the pain. Absolutely. Just like it's no different than somebody drinking a 12-pack every single night just to numb the pain.
And that's the interesting part. So you read the reports from Vietnam, and you would have a 26-year-old corporal, 26-year-old corporal who could go buy beer. Then you would have a 20-year-old sergeant or 21-year-old sergeant who could not.
Right.
And so you had this weird situation, but then both could go get marijuana. You see what I'm saying?
And I've seen historic stuff that talked about the platoon commander knew.
Absolutely.
That was like, I'm not even going to bother with these guys. We know they're smoking weed. And I mean, weed stinks. You're going to smell that from a mile, especially if you're on any kind of a base.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, it was just the relationship to the drug because of the hopelessness. And many of them were disillusioned.
Yeah.
Many of them were disillusioned.
But this goes back to exactly what you're talking about, is that mental health piece.
Yes.
Is why are people doing what they're doing? And how do we address those issues? And it's difficult because, for every person, there's a different reason why they do what they do, whatever the case might be, whether it be childhood, whether it be trauma, PTSD. Some are caused by car accidents. I'm sure you've seen that. At least in the Marine Corps, I've dealt with lots of people who have been involved in IED accidents, rollovers, and I'm talking about just training, not even actual combat.
Gotcha.
I think people would be surprised of how many people are significantly injured or die during training at a regular military base on a daily basis. I mean, they don't die every day, but it does happen more often than I think most people would want to believe.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's also happened, and this is coming from personal knowledge, is the number of sexual trauma assaults on bases are significantly underreported. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's subordinate to, supervisor type roles or officer to enlisted type roles. And a lot of that stuff just doesn't get reported, which just perpetuates a cycle of trauma over and over and over again. Yeah. Which is very unfortunate for the military because there's the resources, but people are scared and they won't speak up.
Yep. Yeah. So I would say let's see, I got to Camp Pendleton about January of 2011. I think by the time I finished my active duty career in 2014, they had started to go to restricted and unrestricted reporting.
Okay.
So if you had a restricted report, it would actually be anonymous, even from the commander.
Okay.
So the person could get services and there would be just some vague information about what the circumstances were to the commander. And then that person could be, they had multiple options. They could be sent to a different base, sent to a different unit, and then receive services without the whole command knowing what exactly is happening.
Would there have to be some kind of investigation?
No.
Okay. It's
Not
just
required.
Just
I'm
look,
sorry, not even allowed.
Okay.
I just want to go further. Not allowed, period, if it's a restricted report.
so it's obviously not taken lightly.
No.
So if somebody lays that card down, that just do that and get them out, do whatever they're requesting, pretty much.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. But that doesn't fix the underlying issue.
It doesn't, but they at that point can seek services, and services are made available to them through the victim advocate's office to get that. And then if the victim decides they want to keep this anonymous, then you still have privilege between yourself and your counselor.
At that point in time, say they get through the trauma of whatever happened, would they then be able to say, now I want to press charges?
Absolutely.
Like, I'm strong enough now I want to press charges?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's called turning a restricted report into an unrestricted report.
Fancy.
And then immediately NCIS goes into action and makes their investigation and recommendation.
Then I'm 100% on board with that.
Yeah. So that's kind of the military solution. One of the other solutions that I told you I was immediately given a lot of these cases, very, very high level, difficult circumstances. And so what they eventually figured out is we probably shouldn't be doing that with lieutenants.
Okay.
And so what they started to do is started to create specialized teams like we do, and like Maricopa County has a sex crimes division. And so now they have a sex crime type of certification process that you need to go through, having so many trials under your belt, so much training, and then so much rank. And so they've gone to that system where you have a little bit more maturity, more experience, and now you're allowed to handle these types of situations. I mean, think when I was a lieutenant, the process also changed significantly. But when I was a lieutenant, I was questioning 12-year-old. I had to put a 12-year-old on the witness stand at an Article 32 investigation for her to testify against her father. And then at that time, the defense counsel had an opportunity to cross-examine them at the Article 32 hearing. Then if the judge found there was probable cause, we'd have to go to trial and she'd have to do it again.
Ugh, that's traumatizing. That's triple traumatizing.
It is.
It seems as though the military has been really good about, I mean, this is what they're good about, is that with rank comes more responsibility, whereas sometimes you can run into an issue where somebody might get put into a position that they can't handle at the county attorney level. Like a junior attorney, they were great at this, but then they got a little bit too premature, which has led to some issues and chaos at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Sure. And just the incorrect leadership or just no experience.
I think it all comes back down to leadership.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned in the Marine Corps, and that I would like to apply at the Pinal County Attorney's Office, is the idea of what does leadership look like? Yeah. Leadership is just not just a figurehead. You're not just there to go out and give speeches and kiss babies. I think the true idea of leadership is, we have a phrase in the Marine Corps called inspect what you expect.
Okay.
You have to be looking and seeing what the people are doing. Now, you're not staring over their shoulder. You have to trust them. One of my philosophies is I want to push responsibility down to the very lowest level as much as we possibly can. But I certainly will be inspecting what these various departments are doing. I want to have metrics so that they know what their responsibilities are. Some ideas about how I would like for them to prosecute cases. All of those things will certainly be in order, but I'm not going to I disagree with handing out policy statements saying this is what you must do in every situation. So just plug and play.
White,
I don't agree with that. I want to trust my people. I want to trust the people that I put in charge under my leadership. Now, it's going to be my responsibility, but I certainly want to push responsibility down as low as we can, so that those young lawyers will have responsibility and won't just feel that they're just plugging and playing.
You want them to take ownership of their decisions.
Absolutely. And they need to face the consequences of those things too.
I agree with that philosophy 100%. So what led you to where we are now and running for Pinal County Sheriff's? I'm sorry. Pardon me. I'm friends with a lot of Pinal County Sheriffs. Pinal County Attorney's Office. I apologize.
So I think a lot of reasons. I think a philosophical difference between myself and the current Pinal County attorney. The way I look at the office is that I'm not just an attorney, but I'm also an advocate in the sense that I want to advocate for smaller government, conservative ideals. I also think it's the job of the county attorney, not just to advocate for the government officials, but to advocate for the people.
Okay.
And I think that's been lost, is that where are the Pinal County attorneys or the county attorneys generally out there advocating for the people, for their individual rights? Are they filing lawsuits? Are they protecting us from what the governor's office is doing? What our various administrative bodies are doing? Are they protecting us from federal regulations leaking into our county through grants and other things? Like, for instance, the Pinal County Board of Supervisors adopted a vaccine equity coordinator position that was required by a grant. So they received money.
Okay.
They received money from the federal government, and in exchange, they had to hire a vaccine equity coordinator. I don't know what that is.
And talking at local political level here, I'm pretty up in tune with a bunch of stuff that happens in Pinal County. Like, when was that notified?
Sure. So just like anything, this goes back to, again, my idea of my difference in philosophy of how things are currently being run, is that there is a notification process. All that's required under Arizona law is just a public notice, and that can be posted outside the door of the Board of Supervisors.
Gotcha.
Now, obviously, they put it online. There's other things, but those big issues, I think, should be discussed. And my idea of how government should run is not that we make decisions behind closed doors and then walk out into the forum and say, rubber stamp these decisions. I think they need to be discussed out in the public. Why are town councils and board of supervisors and county attorneys not out in the public talking about these issues, getting ideas? Are you saying that there's no input from the public, from other people that you could receive and potentially change your opinion on? I mean, shouldn't we be debating and arguing about these ideas and refining our ideas out in the public square? I certainly think that's what we should be doing. But here's the other more important thing. This is a lot more important, and my philosophy is that I want my office and my decisions to be criticized, looked over, and debated. If I make a decision, I want my opinion, my legal opinion, out in the public. I will post it, if I can, under law, so that you can look at it and see where my reasoning was. And you can say, I don't agree with that, or I think that was wrong. And then we will change our opinion. Certainly if it's wrong under the law. But I want it out in the open.
What would the process be to get a hold of you if there's a lot of discourse on something? What would the process look like to get a hold of you to hold these public forums?
So all they would need to do is contact my office. I planned on, again, because I've been in the Marine Corps for so long, I think in that military structural process. Now, I'm certainly not going to be yelling or hazing or incentivize training my employees. That's not going to
smoking everybody first day.
Not going to do that. But the structure.
You heard it here first. He's going to drop all of you. Just kidding.
No, but my structure is going to be in a military structure so that people can get a hold of me. We will have a PIO's office. I know they currently have a PIO's office, but they will be able to get a hold of me so I can go out and hold these forums and we can discuss and debate these issues.
Okay.
Now, we may totally 100% disagree, but I will always defend and protect your right to disagree with me. And in fact, I invite you to. I want you to come and talk to me. I want to invite my office to have debate and disagreement about how the leadership is running. If this person isn't carrying their weight, if this person is not doing a good job, or this person is doing a good job, I want the employees under me to be more recognized than me. I don't want the credit because I won't be doing the work.
Gotcha.
I'll be setting the conditions. I want the people of Pinal County to know who is doing the work so they will be recognized. There's no reason why my deputy of whatever division shouldn't be known by the public.
Yeah.
If they want to be.
Right,
I would rather them be recognized than me.
Right. You're going to be known because you're what's getting elected, and I don't mean this term in a bad way, but the bureaucrats who get put in positions and I just mean that they're appointed. They're appointed by you. Yeah, that should be, if they want to be in the limelight, it's a public office. It's a public,
but remember,
forward-facing office.
But public recognition is extremely important. It's extremely important in the military. I will say this, is I get more joy from giving awards and rewards to the people under me in the Marine Corps than receiving anything myself. I truly do. I've had the opportunity of promoting a corporal to a sergeant. I wrote the letter to get him meritoriously promoted. There was no better time in my life than seeing him being promoted and seeing him take on more responsibility. I absolutely loved it. And that's exactly what I want in my office.
What are the philosophies that you're running off of?
The philosophies are issues of smaller government, transparency. Like, for instance, one of my ideas is I don't think we should have to beg our government for information about what our government is doing.
Amen.
So I should not have to file a Freedom of Information Act request to know what is happening and how decisions are being made. I don't want to know. I want people to know not just the decision that was made, but the why behind it.
Yeah.
I want them to know that. And there's no reason why we should hide that information or keep that information from the public or have them beg or pay or whatever the case might be. I want them to know. And I want to put all of that online. You will see papers. You will see white papers. You will see philosophy documents. You will see legal analysis posted online so that people can see how my reasoning is and what we're thinking about.
Okay.
Like, for instance, right now in Pinal County, we're dealing with the transportation tax issue.
Right.
Obviously,
for the north-south corridor.
Yes. So obviously that was overturned and the Supreme Court found that was an illegal tax. Why don't we know what the legal advice was from the county attorney's office to the Board of Supervisors as to why their thought was, or their thought process was of why it was legal? Because looking at it, from the very beginning, it looks illegal.
Didn't pass the smell test from the beginning.
Absolutely not. It did not. They can say it did, but it didn't. Just, you can look at it. The Supreme Court took them to task on this issue.
And that's the sort of thing, like, all of those mistakes can be avoided if you just send it through legal counsel, send it through constitutional lawyers and say, here.
Yeah, I think some of the mistakes can be avoided, but, even if I'm elected, we're going to make mistakes too.
Of course.
But I will have it out in the open and we can debate about these issues. And at least I can tell you the reason why. Here's why I did what I did. Now, we may disagree or have there may be a legal nuance that we disagree on, but at least you'll know where I'm coming from. Right now, things are so hidden. I don't understand why. Why is our government responding and acting in ways that the people don't know what they're doing? Why? I don't know why you would even hide this information. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think it all boils down to power. They want the power. And I think it all boils down to some sort of internal corruption on some issue about something. They want to hide something. I mean, if the federal government, in the very beginning of, let's just talk about the whole, start of COVID and all that.
Sure.
If at the very beginning they just would have been honest as opposed to feeding us bullshit, even if their information was wrong, the American public would have went with it. And at the local level too, we're so tired of hearing bullshit. We're so tired of hearing, just the headlines. We're just the talking points. There needs to be accountability. And I do fault the people in this, and I was one of them until I got involved. The people need to get more involved in their local politics. You have to understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
You just have to. And like, that's what part of I just want to get the message out there of the local stuff.
Yep. Absolutely. We need to get the message out about local stuff. And here's the other thing is, let's talk about elections. That's going to be controversial, allegedly, where we talk about elections. I don't understand why. To me, elections is we have to have the right processes, but the people also have to believe that the processes work.
Yes.
So say it worked perfectly, and that's been the argument, at least from Maricopa County and some from Pinal County. But if the people don't believe that it works, then let's have a discussion. Bring those people together and let's go through those reasons. Let's have a debate. I don't know why we can't sit down with some leaders and have a Zoom meeting or a meeting at one of these public high schools and say, okay, tell me what your problems are. And let's either say that, let's say that here's how we are going to debunk that issue. Here's how we dealt with this issue, or here's maybe a little bit of misinformation or wrong understanding. But let's talk about it.
That's very logical, and I agree with that point. Like, I have nothing to push back on that because that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
That's the way that the open debate should be.
Yep.
And I think that at the end of the day, people on the left and the right actually do want the same things. We just have different ways of getting there.
Sure.
We want safe streets. We want, no crime. We want not overly harsh, or we don't want a police state, but we still want, safety. I don't get why everything's so polarizing now.
I don't get it.
I don't understand what's going on.
But I think a lot of it has to do with us just being quiet about the decisions our government officials are making.
Yeah.
I don't know why we don't bring it out in public and we talk about it. I mean, do we really know how our local legislators think about certain issues, why they put up the bills that they do? I'd like to know the why behind what they're doing.
That's being part of that process. It's like, where is this coming from?
Correct.
You know, and a lot of it is self-serving. There's a lot of self-serving bills that come through. It's like, I could understand if you had people coming to you and saying, hey, these are the issues of Pinal County. What is your process?
Yeah.
So you brought up some really good points that even I think in a very law enforcement mindset. I just do.
Yeah.
You know, when I think of the attorney's offices, they're dealing with crime.
No.
You know, but you raised some really good points that it's a
I
little
think,
out of my focus.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of a county attorney as just a district attorney, and that's not true.
Right.
The county attorney.
The movies all say district attorney.
Absolutely.
Nobody says prosecuting attorney, except for Arizona.
Yeah. So county attorney is a much broader scope. They handle civil issues. We're also the head legal advisor to all of the governmental departments.
Okay.
So that'll be the Board of Supervisors, planning and zoning, all of those departments, the police department, the sheriff's department, all of their legal issues will come through the county attorney's office and under state statute. And so there's a huge, broad breadth of what the county attorney's office handles. And most of the issues, I think the problems that I have are not with the criminal side, but certainly with the civil and how we're doing our advising. And I think that's where the debate lies, is that people in the Republican Party should know what our philosophies are and let those people decide which one would we rather have. And that's why I'm running for county attorney, because I have a different philosophy.
Who are you currently running against?
I'm running against Kent Volkmer.
And he's a Republican as well.
He is.
Is there any Democrats that are going for Pinal County?
No, not yet.
I just don't suspect that they do very well.
Well, yeah, but remember, we do have LD 16 has a Republican and a Democrat.
Okay.
So I think there's some misnomers about how Pinal County is made up. I mean, you can look the entire east side of the county, and you have a lot of blue collar mine workers.
Yes.
Typically vote Democrat.
Because of the unions.
Because of the unions or whatever the case might be. Maybe it's familial issues or whatever the case. But that's the other thing is I think people pigeonhole Republicans and Democrats. That is not the case. I'm out, again, I speak to various groups, and there's a lot of nuance in how people and why people vote the way they do. And there's a lot of nuance in the Republican Party. And that's what I'm trying to bring out, is that there is enough nuance in the Republican Party of why I'm running and my philosophical differences of transparency, of getting the information out to people, of order and supervision about what our county attorney's office is doing and how we're advising our various governmental departments. And I think the biggest thing is, how did the county attorney's office protect us when we needed them the most? You mentioned COVID. Well, how did they protect our individual liberties during that time? I don't think they did a very good job.
I can't answer that question because I don't know.
Sure. Well, go to the Board of Supervisors today, and the chairs are still 6 feet apart.
Interesting.
That's the philosophy. Or what about the Public Health Department? How did they advise the people of Pinal County as to public health? Were they a mouth of the federal government, or did they do any independent research? What is the requirement of these various departments? What are they doing? What are we paying them for? That's my question.
They should be doing their own independent research or their own independent studies and everything, and giving their local guidelines, their local health department guidelines.
And this is the problem, is when the rubber meets the road, what did we do? We became a mouthpiece of the federal government, and that is not the job of a Pinal County official. We hired you to be a local person to handle Pinal County issues, and you should handle Pinal County specific issues, not just a mouthpiece of the federal government, and just send reports up to the CDC.
Funding.
It's funding.
How much did the Pinal County Attorney's Office get in federal funding over the last couple of years, if you haven't known those numbers?
I don't know. I do know that obviously there's significant amount of funds from grants, but those go to a lot of times specific projects.
Gotcha.
Whether it be, I know the Sheriff's Department does a lot of things with Border Patrol, or they'll have a certain task force that'll be funded.
Right.
So there's quite a bit of funding, but that's the other issue that I question is, how many grants have we said no to because we're worried about being too entwined with federal government?
Okay. Do you think there's a lot of that?
I do.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of it. I've seen them. I've read the bills. And I think, unfortunately, we accept grants so quickly and not look at what potential strings are attached. We need to be a little bit wary about what we're actually getting ourselves into. What does the contract say? How many employees are funded by the federal government that work for Pinal County?
Yeah.
Is that something that we truly want? What does a vaccine equity coordinator do?
I don't know. And in a lot of it, the department could probably take a look at it as, hey, if we get this grant money, then that's these 3 people that we don't have to pay out of our pocket,
Correct.
so we can keep this little pocket of money here. And DHS or whoever, federal blah blah blah, federal triple letter agency can fund these people.
Yep.
And it's probably a position for 2, especially on the task forces and all that type of stuff.
And here's the other thing that I think that this, again, goes back to philosophy of why I'm running. Why are most of the schools in Pinal County, at least the school districts, teaching social emotional learning?
That I don't know.
Well, we are. You can go look at the Florence or Casa Grande school district websites today, and they advertise the fact that they're teaching social emotional learning. My question is,
What does that
why?
mean?
Well, this all goes back to, again, philosophy difference. Is a lot of these programs are implemented by federal government. Social emotional learning was a school-based philosophy to deal with emotionally traumatized children out in Connecticut. So basically, I won't give you the whole history, but this particular doctor saw that there was a lot of emotionally abused children who were in the school who were not performing well.
Okay.
And so he decided to create a curriculum to deal with those circumstances with trauma.
Okay.
Essentially that they've been victimized. That got transformed into a nationwide push by the federal Department of Education to start teaching this trauma-based education to all of the school districts. And we've now adopted that in Pinal County. So my question is this, and this goes back to my philosophy of freedom, is that if parents choose that for their children, then that's fine. If that's what they choose. My question is were parents ever given the choice?
Okay.
I don't think they were. I don't think we've been told. And my other question is, how are we getting curriculum into our schools? What does that process look like?
That's a good question.
Have we even analyzed it? Have we looked at it? Well, if I get elected, one of my county attorneys will be doing that.
Okay.
And producing and publishing a paper on how curriculum goes from point A to point B.
Okay.
How it goes from the Department of Education all the way down to the local level. I want to see what that process looks like. I want to investigate it. And then I think it should be put up to the parents. If parents want their children to be taught, parents want their children to be taught that government is the answer, that we're all victims, that whiteness is a problem, that reparations are going to solve all those issues, then fine, that's what parents want.
Are those talking points that are being taught in the social
Absolutely.
emotional?
It's a Marxist-based education.
Okay.
And by Marxism,
You're telling me this is in Florence Unified School
Casa
District?
Grande.
Casa Grande?
Yes.
Okay. Right now?
Absolutely. You can go look on their website today and see their video that talks about social emotional learning.
Okay.
Yes.
And again, I want to be very clear on the points that it's
Sure.
Marxist based.
So it's Marxist based in this sense, is that the truth comes from the government. That we need the government. We need the government in order to overcome victimhood. This is some of the problem that I have with what's going on, not only in our federal government, currently with our state government, with our governor, is that they are pushing these certain programs of government is the answer. We need to grow the size of government. Government must give reparations to level the playing field. We can call it used to be called affirmative action. Now it's called DEI. I don't know if you saw this past week, but the governor's office just signed into law a DEI task force.
I did hear about that. Yeah.
So we are literally bringing in California-style government into Pinal County and importing it through the federal government. And it's being funded by the federal government. My question is why?
Why?
I don't want that.
So, okay, so a little on a different devil's advocate in kind of a way.
Yep.
What about those children who are not performing due to sexual type trauma?
Sure.
How do we reach them?
So these programs, I think you need to separate the origin of a program with how it's being implemented.
Okay.
And I think we've been sold a bill of goods. Is something can start off as something that's well-meaning.
The thing is,
Am I missing?
it's just falling a little bit.
Okay.
Like, as time is going on, I'm noticing it getting lower and lower and lower.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah, totally.
So I think a program can be well-meaning, and then it eventually get corrupted over time. And I think initially the program was very well-meaning, and it assisted people. It assisted traumatized students.
Okay.
But what it's become now, and how the various teachers unions and the government, as the federal government gets its fingers into it, how it's being implemented now, it's totally different of what it was initially created for.
Why are these Marxist ideas getting pushed so hard?
Because it deals with, I think when people say Marxism, people freak out. Like, you're a conspiracy theorist or you're crazy. Marxism essentially is the view that we need government to solve the problems of people. This goes back to your basic ideas of government. Hobbesian, Lockean, Rousseauian. Marxism is essentially a Hobbesian view. Essentially a Hobbesian view in the sense that the world is chaos.
Okay.
And we will all beat each other and kill each other unless the government or a strong power steps in and mediates between us to teach us the right things to do and the wrong things to do. That's essentially what Marxism is. I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that at all.
View.
Yeah, I don't agree with that
I
at all.
take much more of a Lockean view in the sense that it should be individual liberty. The government...
I'm not worried about that.
Okay. The government was created to protect life, liberty, and property, the pursuit of happiness.
Okay.
And the government should empower individuals to make their own choices.
I agree wholeheartedly with that.
So my question is that, are these views being taught in school?
That's total indoctrination.
Do parents have the choice of where they send their children to school? You know, I know the governor is currently out there talking about removing school choice. Oh, the empowerment scholarships are costing the state too much money. We're going to go bankrupt because of this, because of that.
Right.
No. A lot of the children, most of the people who are using the empowerment scholarships comes from failing school districts where they can place their children into better performing schools. We've seen this time and time and time again in not just Arizona, where parents with choice are giving their children better education. We see that in New Orleans. Again, I'm stationed there. So I talk to the local folks. The parents who have the choice do not choose the public schools.
Right.
They want the better performing schools. There needs to be some competition out there.
So I'm a product of public education.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that, I guess I just don't understand why we can't just stick to the basics of reading, writing, arithmetic. Why do these socialist policies and all of it? Like, I do agree in supporting children who have trauma. I do agree in having some sort of a program, but that would have to be identified more at like the teacher level. Like, hey, this child is having an issue. Maybe let's see if we can get them some resources. But I don't agree with, the government is the answer in any way, shape, or form.
And every child is not a victim because
Correct.
of colonialism or because of 1619 Project or
Correct.
whatever the case might be. That's just not the case.
I am very, very tired of everybody's a victim.
Yeah.
I'm very, very tired of that mentality. I'm very, very tired of that getting pushed on the news by everybody.
Well, and my question is that are parents informed, and is our government looking to protect individual liberties or to protect our institutions? And that is a fine balance, but I certainly fall on the side of individual liberties. And I'm not convinced parents have had any choice in the matter of how their children are being educated in public schools.
I agree with you.
And I think if they were given the choice, they wouldn't choose what they're doing now.
Right.
And that's what I want to change. And I think it changes with going back to my philosophy of transparency. How does a curriculum go from the federal Department of Education into our local education? I want to know what that process is.
I do too.
And we
now.
will be investigating it.
Yeah, I just don't understand those philosophies. And it goes back to when I look back on how I was in high school, none of these ideas were taught. It was just the instruction was given on the subject matter.
Yeah.
I don't understand the push why this is happening now.
Well, unfortunately, when the federal government gets involved in local issues, it's just like, there's a push now for the federal government to get involved in elections. I can't think of a worse possible thing to occur.
Do you, when the talking point is said that we want to, we don't want to mandate identifications for voting because it excludes the minority communities. What is your response to that?
So there's no evidence for that. So the evidence is that availability of identification is very, very easy to get. There are lots of community groups that allow it, and people that I've spoken to, and again, I've seen no information that minority groups or majority groups have any problem getting some sort of voter identification. There should be no issue. I mean, if they can fill out a ballot, why can't they fill out an identification form?
I'm going to give you my personal take on this.
Sure.
I worked in law enforcement for over a decade, and out of those over a decade experience, 9 of those years I was spent actually in the patrol car making traffic stops and pulling people over and interacting with the public on a daily basis. I can count on one hand the number of times where I stopped somebody where they actually did not have an identification.
I think people have identification.
They have identification.
We have to have identification to fly. We have to have identification to get government services. We have to have identification for everything else. And under Arizona law, you have to have identification to vote anyway. So I don't see what the problem is. It's state law.
I agree with you on that.
So, and I will say Pinal County does a very, very good job of checking identification before people vote.
Yes, I've never ran into. I'm a PC for the Republican Party down here, and I've never ran into an issue where they didn't do such a thing.
Nope.
So,
and a lot of times they actually have a scanner. You'll actually scan your ID through it to cross-check it against a database to ensure that you're in the right voting location too.
Yeah.
So,
I need to use the restroom.
Okay.
Are you good for a quick break?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's take a quick break. Coordinate. Let's actually get people the help they need. You know, I don't. You know, I have my own demons and I fight my own stuff, but helping people helps me.
Yep. I think it's true with everybody.
Yeah.
I think if we did more of that, that's one of the things that I'm trying to teach my kids is instead of spending the holidays like Christmas, talking about us, what gifts we receive by giving, going out and serving, all of those other things, I think it truly benefits you even more.
I agree.
You know, one of the jobs that I had was I sat on the board of directors at Paz de Cristo, which is in Mesa.
I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah. So I sat on the board of directors for a little while until I deployed in 2020 and
just making sure everything's good to go.
Oh, okay. No, it's such a fantastic experience. But one of the things they required us to do is we couldn't just sit back in the back and make decisions. We had to actually go out and serve.
Good.
And I actually found a lot more benefit of getting out there and serving the meals. That's the other thing that they make you do is when you sign up to serve a meal, you have to make it too. And you have to clean up.
Oh, good.
Which I think is important because I think some people want the recognition, maybe the TikTok photo, whatever the case might be, the feel-good check in the box. No, guess what? I'm cleaning, I'm making it, I'm cutting up the salad, I'm doing whatever it is, then I'm cleaning it up right after, and these people are gone. I'm serving them. They're not here to just get a free meal.
Yeah.
So I think that's such a benefit, such a huge benefit.
And the older I get, like I'm a grown man. I can buy anything I need for Christmas. I don't need that stuff. I want to serve my community. I want to do better. And this is this is where I think that, again, part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I fell in love with the cannabis community too. Cannabis really, really helped out my back. And then I had some amazing psychological breakthroughs using cannabis, again, responsibly. And everything I always say always goes back to being responsible about it, not getting in your car and driving immediately. And so I fell in love with the cannabis community. And then when I started helping and advocating for the cannabis community, after the benefits that I saw, they're dealing with a lot of the same trauma.
Oh yeah.
It's the cross. It's everything is the same. It's the age old adage of we absolutely have more things in common than not.
Totally agree.
And that's where I'm able to. I'm very open about the fact that I'm a former law enforcement officer. I now sit on the board of Arizona. I've been there for a while, so everybody knows who I am, and nobody's scared of me. And it's actually fueled a lot of conversation because they want to hear from law enforcement. And those are the direct things that impact their lives. You know, on the back end, for people who are not politically motivated, are not going to really understand the role that you have.
Sure.
But that's exactly why I want to do what I'm doing and show the other cannabis community members, like, hey, if we have an advocate or whatever, like, this is the person we can support. So on that question, what is your stance on cannabis?
So my stance on cannabis is essentially what the law is.
Okay.
The law allows it under certain circumstances, and I'm certainly for following the law.
Okay.
I think the way I look at law and legal issues with cannabis, alcohol, whatever the case might be, and some of these other alternative treatments is as a prosecutor to follow what the rules and regulations set out. I look for order. Okay. Which goes back to kind of our discussion regarding schooling. We need to be teaching the constitutional system when we're upset about something. The idea shouldn't be to destroy and to break and to steal from Target.
Right.
The idea should be is that there are avenues to change the things that we want to change. And cannabis, I think, is one of those things that I think has changed for the better.
Yes.
Certainly. But there was a legal way to do it. Arizona wasn't ready initially. It kind of slowly crept in. But
Right.
then obviously through the proposition system, then it changed. That's what's neat about about our Arizona system is that we have both direct representatives who write the laws, but we also have a proposition system where the people can promote that. It goes back to that idea of Hobbes and Locke. It's really a Rousseauian view. Rousseau believed that the people ultimately should have all the power and should be able to petition and change their government directly, not through just a representative.
Gotcha.
In Arizona, we have a hybrid system. So we got rid of the Lockean view completely, where you get rid of a king, and now we have both. We can work through our representatives, or we can work through the people. And so I think it's the best of both worlds. And we've changed a lot of rules like that. But I believe that we should also follow the rules. So whatever those rules are, let's follow them until they're changed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That was a very political answer.
But it's truly what I believe.
I gotcha.
It is.
If the will of the people say this, then that's what we're going to do.
Sure.
And that's actually one of the reasons why I like living in Pinal County,
Mm-hmm.
because of my run-ins with Pinal County deputies. In particular, it's been just the rule of law. I personally have not had a bad experience with them. It's like, this is what the law states. This is what we're going to follow.
Sure.
So, and again, that's on a personal.
Yeah, and on a personal level, it's the same thing. It's the law certainly does have gray areas, but at the same time, the rules are the rules. We set up the system.
Yeah.
If we teach and advocate for breaking of the rules, then we end up in chaos.
Yeah.
It's a situation like we have in San Francisco, where businesses are leaving a particular area because theft under $1,000 is not prosecuted
At all.
A person. I grew up going to San Francisco 4 or 5, 6 times a year with my family. We would go visit for Christmas and see all the beautiful lights. I remember going to FAO Schwartz and seeing all the big toys, right? It's just like the movie Home Alone, where the protagonist goes into the toy store and sees all these beautiful things. That's literally my experience of going to San Francisco. But then you see videos of people going to the Palace of Fine Arts and having their car windows broken into because there's no law and order.
No.
There has to be both. There has to be law and order, but at the same time, an ability for the people to change that system. So that's the way I look at it. And here's the other thing is, I told you that I'm a VA accredited attorney, which means that I help a lot of, just on a pro bono basis, I don't do it as part of my business, but assist veterans with filling out their disability claims.
Gotcha.
And going to the VA.
Gotcha.
And getting their appropriate disability benefits. I've done hundreds of these. If a particular procedure or a process or a plant assists a veteran in overcoming their PTSD issues, overcoming childhood trauma or military trauma, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The question remains, though, is that you can be for it, and that's awesome, but how do we get the federal government to allow the testing to be done so that, the underground stories and the anecdotal stories are amazing.
Sure.
But if we can't get the the funding or the testing or anything like that, then how do that's not your problem. I'm just saying in the big
it isn't
grand
my
total.
problem, but this goes back to an understanding of government.
Yeah.
This is where understanding the Leviathan that is government is helpful. I've had the wonderful ability to work in both the federal government and state government and local government. So I've seen it. I work through federal bureaucracy all the time in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
That's one of my jobs. So yes, it is difficult, but at the same time, it's a simple solution. All that needs to occur is for marijuana to be removed as a Schedule I drug.
Right.
That's it. And then once that happens, like the snap of a finger, now testing can be done.
Yep.
And a lot of problems get resolved. And I think that process has in fact started.
So I do know that the HHS has sent over their recommendation to deschedule it out of Schedule 3 to either drop it down, or I'm sorry, out of Schedule 1. Thank you. To down to Schedule 3 or Schedule 2.
Yeah.
Mike, so would you be more in favor of legalization or decriminalization?
I think I would look at, my view is individual liberties based upon what an individual chooses to do, obviously within rules. So we would still have rules regarding DUIs and other those things.
1,000,000%.
I would rather it be taken off the Schedule 1 drug list and be decriminalized.
So what about the black market?
You're always going to have the black market. I mean, you have a black market now. I mean,
There's a black market on cigarettes and alcohol right now.
There is. And so you see that even in Colorado. That was one of the selling points that I think was a little bit of a false number, but you're never going to get rid of the black market. But it goes back to issues of quality. And I think as production schedules ramp up and maybe getting rid of some of those government regulations, prices can come down. I think that's another problem, is that, yes, it's legal, but all of the hoops that somebody has to step through in order to get it from the grower, in order to get it into people's hands, there's a lot of government red tape that could be removed. But that's my view with a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think the same thing with gasoline. I think the same thing, a lot of the products we buy. The government needs to get their hands out of that. I understand their tax dollars will go down, but I think it'll be better for the people.
There's a big push right now, and we kind of talked about it, is a lot of people are talking about, and again, this is just falling on the Republican side of things and,
Sure.
and the logic of why should these corporations make, these corporate people make millions of dollars, and it's really coming down to people want a living wage, a living wage, a living wage, but nobody can define what a living wage is, and I'd like to hear your take on that. Like, what does that mean?
Sure.
In this day and age?
Well, it's interesting. We're on a podcast, but speaking of a podcast, there was an interesting guest on Patrick Bet-David's podcast the other day named Mr. Woodson.
Okay.
He is a civil rights advocate, knew Dr. Martin Luther King at the time. And one of his things that he speaks about is most of his focus is specifically on the black community and how the, quote, great society of Lyndon Johnson has absolutely decimated the black community specifically. Okay. And a lot of that has to do with government handouts. The government getting involved in either replacing the father or replacing an income or whatever the case might be, and destroying some of these communities. The idea of a living wage is probably one of the worst ideas you could possibly have. First of all, there is no such thing. So government will always be involved in your business. They will eventually tell you what healthcare you have, what microchip they want in your hand, what passport you can have, where you can go. There's obviously going to be limitations. That was one of the big reasons why a lot of people objected to Obamacare. The promise was that prices of medical services would go down. The exact opposite has occurred. I would love to know a single person in Pinal County or anywhere else where they're really, really happy with the prices of their medical care.
I don't think
it doesn't happen.
Find it.
That's the problem. Because the government gives us big promises, but no accountability on the back end. Right. This goes back to our wars. Okay, fine. You want to go into this particular country and handle your business? Great. Again, I'm in the Marine Corps. I will absolutely do my duty.
Yep.
But tell me what our goals are, what our end state is, and what a good ending looks like.
Yeah.
When are we going to get out? What is that line?
What is a win?
Please tell us. I'd love to know what that is. That's what I want to know regarding these government programs. What they should have done is say, fine, you want to give a living wage. I know it's going to fail, but let's give it a try. Well, it should automatically sunset after a particular period of time. It should go away, or there should be other type of work requirements, whatever the case might be. But I will say this, is that ideas of a living wage or welfare benefits or whatnot, the amounts of money we spend on those programs pales in comparison to the amount we send through corporate welfare and to our military industrial complex and other programs like that. They're so tiny compared to some of those other things. So regarding focuses of government, these are certainly not the issues that I think the government should be focusing on. I think we need to look at ways to bring some of our troops home, decide where we want to send our money, and protect our service members from more PTSD and trauma.
I've had conversations where these veterans are telling me, if I would have known this is the type of care I was going to get when I got home, I never would have enlisted. Yeah. That's a scary, scary thought.
It is.
Like, I don't even want to put that out there and then you talk to some people and it's like, oh, the services I get are great.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. It's like, well, I'm very happy that it's working for you, but
a lot of people, it doesn't work.
Right.
In 2020, I was out in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and met several members who were at the Wounded Warrior Regiment. So what they do is when a particular service or Marine specifically gets injured, they go to one of our Wounded Warrior regiments on the East Coast or West Coast.
Okay.
They stay on active duty so they can be paid and go through their medical care, their treatment program. And it's very, very unfortunate how slow some of these processes are to get those individuals out. I knew a guy that had sat there for 3 years waiting to be discharged.
How does he move on with life?
He doesn't.
He doesn't. He sits there and waits.
He waits. Waits and waits and waits.
And the problem that I have, you said that was funded by the Wounded Warrior Project.
Wounded Warrior Regiment.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Totally different thing.
Yeah.
This is through the military.
That was my misunderstanding. I was going to say that's kind of a weird partnership.
No.
That's what I was thinking. No. One of the things I want to talk to you about as well is that here in Pinal County, we have a very diverse population. And correct me if this is the statistic I heard. Okay. So I'm not pulling it up, staring at it. I heard that Santan Valley has the largest amount of, for lack of a better term, Hurricane Katrina refugees from back in 2000, what was that, 5?
Yeah.
6?
2005.
And we have a very large Hispanic population here. Yeah. How do you navigate that difference in the populations here?
I think people, just like you said, all want the same thing. They want to be able to raise their families in peace. They want to be able to put food on the table, have a job where they think they're providing something good to society. And I think the best way to do that is not through government intervention. The best way to do that is to empower the individual. That's how you do it.
What does that look like for the mothers that can't work, for the people who can't work, stuff like that? Or at this stage in their life, they can't work but could work later. How do we incentivize them to move forward?
So some of this goes back to education, right? If you're not getting good education in school, then you don't have job skills and abilities. This goes back to choice, school choice. You have these individuals, like for instance, not every kid wants to go to college.
Right.
Some want to go to trade school. I know my son is actually in trade school right now. So he wasn't ready to go to college yet, so he went to trade school. He's going to learn a trade. He's in absolute heaven. He loves it.
And he's going to be smarter than the ones that go to,
and probably make more money, to be honest. So I think we need to start thinking better in terms of how does the government solve that, to how do we empower people to solve their problems? Because I think people truly want to take control of their lives, and they know that the government truly is not there to protect them or take care of them. The best person to protect yourself is you. And so how do we empower them to do that? There are plenty of programs out there to do it. Like, let me give you this statistic. I told you I was a board of directors at Paz de Cristo. We'd often get a lot of veterans in there, and I would talk to them. And there's a statistic out there that says there's enough money for vouchers to put people in living situations, whether it be an apartment building or whatever the case might be, to house every single 100% of all veterans, homeless veterans. The money's there.
The money's there.
But the problem is this.
The bureaucracy.
No. Here's the shocking thing. And this goes back to, we can't just talk to think tanks. We can't just talk to people who are in the ivory tower. We have to go down to the people and ask them what they want, what their circumstances are. So if you actually go talk to a lot of these folks, you know what they told me? And I was surprised about this. They said, I don't want to live in a house. I enjoy it out here. So their needs, we always say housing first. Well, guess what? That particular person doesn't want to live in a house.
No.
So how do we help him? So instead, why don't we take that home voucher, turn it into cash or whatever the case might be, and allow him to feed himself, get medical care. One of the things that we would do at Paz de Cristo, I think once a week, we would bring in a shower truck. Okay. So individuals can have showers. We had tons of clothing donations. We could put a suit on 100% of the homeless veterans. And the homeless at least in Mesa, there was enough clothing for them to have that.
Wow.
So it's possible.
The community will rally.
They absolutely will.
The community will rally. And I've also learned too that the community, when you ask, people will help.
Absolutely.
But there's so many places that don't ask.
Mm-hmm. Or they don't know.
Right.
Yeah, that's the big thing we get around the Christmas time and everybody feels in a giving mood. Mm-hmm. Well, you also need to be in a giving mood in June, July, and August, where, supplies are down. That's why you see a lot of pushes around Christmas time. But think if people gave a little bit of their time during and throughout the year, how much more we could help our community.
The question that I've had is take these homeless, let's take veterans out of it,
okay,
but just addicts. How do we solve this fentanyl crisis without just incarcerating everybody.
Yeah.
That it's killing hundreds of thousands of our American citizens.
Yeah.
And I know it's just as bad down here in Pinal County.
It is. Yeah, it's a horrific thing. And this goes back to unregulated drug use too. You know, some of these dispensaries are at least putting out a product that is quality control and tested. If you go buy marijuana on the street, you don't know what's in it. And same thing with fentanyl.
It's everywhere.
So it is everywhere. So I think one of the things that we need to be careful of is us saying when we say how are we, typically we refer to how is government going to solve this problem? Well, we've had a war on drugs.
Valid point.
How successful has that been?
Not at all.
To me, this goes back to what are the building blocks of solving real problems? And in the end, it goes back to relationships.
Yep.
It goes back to family. And it goes back to members of a community caring about one another. And I think once we solve those particular issues of keeping families together, incentivizing families, talking about members of the community getting together and actually speaking, having good debates, going out to, go to a local barbecue, whatever the case might be. So you see each other and interact with one another, even though we're different. I think that solves and tends to solve a lot of those problems. We're not separate individuals. We're all Americans. We should be proud and happy about living here, about what we have, our opportunities. And let's get back to those basics. And I think that solves some of those problems. But you're right. Incarceration certainly is not the answer. But I will say this, incarceration is part of the answer. Okay. And then this potentially might be controversial. But I will say I represent clients who have been addicted and are addicted to fentanyl. And they personally tell me that they're happy that they were incarcerated because now they're clean. It's the first time they've thought clearly in 3 years.
Yeah.
And now they can potentially move on with their lives. How else do you solve that? How else do you solve that issue? I don't think it's a single approach. I think it's a multi-prong approach. But in the end, it comes down to community, family, creating purpose for individuals. Would you rather have a school that teaches that America is a imperfect country, but a great country? We live on freedoms and ideals where we can change things. We believe that there is a better future than we had in the past. Or if we get taught that this is a garbage place, we need to slough it off, it's colonialism, there's nothing good regarding this. And the only way to solve the problem is to give more power to the governor or to the president.
Right.
It creates hopelessness.
I'll take the former.
Yeah, I would too.
And I do think that there has been a huge, significant loss of teaching any sort of pride in this country.
Yeah.
And I will say that it's very polarizing as far as whether you're on the left or the right.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that the right is instilling values regarding loving this country. And I have seen a lot of rhetoric from the left that's destroy it from the inside or from the inside out and rebuild it. It's like, how about we just fix it?
Yep.
And before we start burning shit down.
Yep. There's an old saying by G.K. Chesterton, who wrote in the early 20th century. He said, "Never remove a fence until you know why it was put there in the first place." And I think that's one of the issues is we're removing the fence very, very quickly, and we're seeing the effects of it, especially at our border. And what's going to happen in the future? We have people streaming across the border. We have fentanyl coming into our country.
Yes.
And it's absolutely decimating our communities. But the only way to fix that is to have community back. But that's not something that government can resolve. That needs to be on the people. One of the things they talked about, even in the old Roman Empire, Cicero talked about this, is that in order to be a true citizen of a republic, there are a lot of responsibilities that citizens must have. This should also be taught in schools. We shouldn't run from jury duty. We should do it.
I agree.
We shouldn't run from responsibility of voting. We need to do it. We should expect responsibility. And in fact, citizenry should want responsibility. And that goes back to community. Are we serving on our volunteer fire department? Are we helping with the posse? Are we helping, the school with crossing guards? Instead, we look to outsource everything in America today. Yeah. Well, what am I getting for this? How much am I going to be paid? Well, I think we need to start rethinking what we do with our community. We need to start volunteering. I know I certainly do, and I've taught that to my children. And I think other people need to reconsider that too.
Amen.
Yeah.
Again, it's about being involved at the local level.
Involved at the local level. That's the only thing that solves any of these problems.
Yeah.
And again, I've talked to lots of people who are addicted to fentanyl. And the number one, It goes back to one thing: is hopelessness. That's what every one of them tells me. Now they're hopeless for different reasons, but
Right.
it goes back to hopelessness. Is that I don't see tomorrow better than today. And I think the great thing about America is it's the exact opposite. Is there will be a better tomorrow because we can change tomorrow. We are in control. You do have abilities, and there are opportunities. We just need to look for them, find the right resources. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to in the jails here, and I told them, you do realize you can just not do that and go to school. You can get school paid for. What do you mean? You can do this. I've brought copies of like sample GED programs because they said, I can never pass. I'll bring it to them. We'll do the test right there, and I'll show them that they can pass.
No.
They never actually were told or believed that they can do something. And I think that's the great part is we need to instill hope. And that's one good thing that the Marine Corps does with these young kids,
Yes.
men and women coming from all walks of life. You know, they make it through high school, but guess what? We empower them to be fantastic Americans and fantastic human beings, educated. They want to work hard. You'd be amazed if you give a little bit of time to somebody and you truly care about them, how hard they'll work for you.
And if bosses could just understand that as a whole, that would be a wonderful place to work.
I understand it. You can go ask people who have worked for me. They asked to work for me because I want to empower them. It's not about me. It's about me making sure that they are better tomorrow than they were yesterday. That's what we should do.
Decentralized type of command.
Has to be. I don't make all the decisions. I want to empower you to make the decisions. That's how I want to run things.
You'd mentioned the border.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on what's going on the border and how it's impacting Pinal County specifically?
It's having an absolute huge impact.
Yes.
I can tell you personally, not only have I've seen truckloads of people crossing the border run through Pinal County, I've had them crash into my fence personally on my house. There's nothing more frightening than having a truck crash into your fence and people streaming out of that vehicle with weapons when my wife and children are at home. It's horrible.
No.
And that hasn't just happened once. That's happened down my street. It's happened on my street. And it's happening all over. And it's happening more frequently. So it is affecting us. And I think we need to do a much better job of protecting the citizens of Pinal County. There should be, I'd love to have a task forces and much more public display of prosecuting these types of crimes. That's certainly something that I will do if possible.
I do remember back in the day there was a specific law for the, for lack of a better term, the coyote.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought
We stop
that
trafficking.
okay.
Absolutely.
I remember 13-2319 got repealed, but I don't remember what the law is on the books now. Is there something with some teeth to it right now?
Yeah, I think there obviously depends on the circumstances.
Right,
We throw
right.
out terms like coyote. The law doesn't look at coyote and prosecute coyotes. What they prosecute are the people bringing drugs. That's trafficking of drugs. Bringing
Pardon
humans.
my non-political
No.
statement.
I'm trying to clarify it for the audience.
Yeah, totally.
Is that I want to make sure we drill down on the specifics of what the law can do and what the law cannot do. The law certainly can prosecute drug trafficking, human trafficking, sex crimes, all of those other categories that we talk about. The law does and can prosecute for those particular crimes. And different coyotes bring different things into the county, and we certainly can go after them.
The one thing this is something that I've been very passionate about for years, prior to the current sheriff who was in now, who has had prior to Trump, said I worked interdiction back in 2008, 9, 10. So I've been advocating for the border wall for years prior to the hot button issue. But right now, as we sit here on October 24th of 2023, the hot button issue is, gosh, are there now terrorists that are possibly getting across? Meanwhile, there's a whole army of people going, we've been telling you this shit for years. Y'all haven't been listening? Yeah. It's very, very, very frustrating.
It is frustrating. It's frustrating to watch and frustrating to see our government have no teeth. But this all goes back to representation. And Locke said it very, very well, is that when we're tired of, and when we don't believe our government is truly representing us, it is our duty to get rid of them. And I think it's our duty to start getting rid of some of these folks.
So how do you bridge the gap with people who think, I'm going to say like us,
Sure,
that border needs to be closed and secured, because once you secure the border, then you can deal with the internal issues. We can get safer streets. You know, it's not going to stop everything,
No.
but it's going to cut the flow down. And then the people who think differently, that say, oh, they're just coming to this country to make a better life for themselves. And while I do agree with that to a degree, that's not the majority. So that's my question is how do you appeal and explain the realities of what's going on in a way that people can understand?
It's very simple. And the simple is we need to have a better immigration policy to allow people to immigrate to our country. But there's been no incentive from our federal government to fix the system. So we need to speak to our local congressmen and congresswomen about changing the law. We need to elect people who are willing to change that law. That's really what we need to do. It's a difficult problem, but in the end, it's a simple problem. Is if we can fix immigration policy, even how we did it with all the folks coming from Europe through Ellis Island, we need to have that style type of immigration system to allow them. So we know who's coming into our country, you know, to allow them to pay taxes, to participate. That's the other thing that we aren't talking too much about is the people coming into our country now are not participating in society.
Right.
They're not paying for the medical services. They're not paying taxes. They're not paying for the roads.
They might want to.
Absolutely. A lot of them do. I speak
Yes.
to some of them.
Yes.
I'm not saying that they don't want to, but there's no mechanism to allow. It's just like the old thing. If you wanted to pay a debt to, or pay the IRS or pay the government additional money, there's no mechanism to take it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Obviously it's silly, but there's no mechanism of doing it.
Right.
And that's one of the other problems with a problematic immigration system.
One of the things, the arguments that's made regarding Ellis Island, well, they just came across on Ellis Island. Well, actually, they were screened.
Yes.
There was a process. And if they were not allowed on, they got a big white X painted on them that says, nope, you got to go back to your country. This is something that the other side sometimes doesn't recognize, is that many people were turned away for various reasons, particularly health reasons.
Well, yeah, health reasons. But other thing is you don't have a right to immigrate to America.
Right.
We choose who can come in and stay out. That should be our right. That is our right through our constitutional system. And so I don't see why it would be a bad thing to say we want this person and not that person. Obviously, we shouldn't be making those decisions based upon race, color, religion. But certainly if there's a fair, objective system to allow people in, or, you know, maybe it's think about all the people we've immigrated into this country that have given so much back. You can name people like Elon Musk,
100%.
obviously Oppenheimer, various other folks who have come in, Albert Einstein. A lot of these people came and immigrated to the country and wanted to integrate. And some of their proudest moments was becoming an American citizen. You know, look at the governor of California when I was there, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He says, you can hear him. He says one of the proudest moments he ever had was becoming an American citizen.
My own stepfather currently immigrated from Canada and says it's one of the greatest moments. And it's one of these things where you're selling the people who did it the legal right way short by just allowing everybody to come in. And I think they feel more strongly than we do. They're like, no, you back of the line there, buddy. You're going to do it the right way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the problems that I ran into many times when I'd have traffic stops with people who were not from America is, they might have had insurance. They might have been whatever I pulled them over for. But the biggest issue was they wanted to work, great, but they had to use somebody else's identification to get that paycheck.
Yep.
Whereas if we could just line them up, fingerprints, photograph, here's ID, here's a taxpayer ID.
Yep.
After a few years, if you've been a good boy or a good girl, you're good to go. You can come into the country and now you're a citizen.
Well, that's what they do with green card.
Right.
The green card process. That's exactly what it is. You can have a business, you can have a certain type of visa, you can be an engineer, whatever the case might be, but there's a certain process for it. Yeah, absolutely. That's all we need to do is fix that process. And it certainly can be done.
Yeah.
It certainly can be done.
Guns.
Okay. Yes. I shoot a lot.
We cannot have a gentleman with a United States Marine Corps shirt sitting here and not talk about guns.
Sure. Absolutely. So, obviously I believe in the Second Amendment. Certainly it should be a strong Second Amendment. I like the fact that there's no requirement for concealed carry in Arizona. There's a constitutional carry right. But obviously guns are used to protect us.
Yes.
And it's not just a right of to own a hunting rifle to go hunting. It certainly is a right for protection of us against our government. It's very, very clear. And we've used that right. And I think if any moment in our recent history has shown us the importance of the Second Amendment, it's exactly what happened in Israel a couple weeks ago. They were totally unprepared. The government didn't show up and protect their citizens for whatever reason. I don't know all the facts yet, but they were unprepared. They didn't have the ability to defend themselves. I know I personally go shoot quite a bit. I'm a member of Rio Salado Gun Club up in Mesa. Of course, I do my quals every year.
Gotcha.
Both on rifle, pistol. We shoot night shoots, NBG shoots. We do all of those things.
You've got the best of both worlds. You get to go do the dressed up, sharp dressed man, and then you get to go play gung ho oorah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's a good mix.
That's why we did it. It's almost like I thought about this process.
Right. That's awesome.
But no, I enjoy it. I go out and compete in IDPA matches, International Defensive Pistol Association. Nice. And I get my kids out there too. So they're familiar with firearms. They may not love them as much as I do, but at least some familiarity with the process to make sure that they can be safe if they're around, say they're at a friend's house and they see something on the ground or whatever the case might be. Absolutely.
I have to be very, very delicate with what I say regarding cannabis and guns, and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I can just say that I'm a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. Yep. I believe in it heavily, and I think that you're 100% correct that people forget that it's about a tyrannical government.
Yeah,
it's about, and what happened in Israel is, a tragedy. And they were an unarmed population.
They were.
Show me one time in history where the government that was unarming the people was a good government.
No, it doesn't, because that shows you that the government doesn't trust the people.
Right.
And that's not the purpose of government. That's a twisted version. This goes back to Marxism. It's a twisted version of what government is for.
Yep.
Government is to protect my rights, not to protect the government institutions or government employees. It's not there.
People seem to get confused the fact that the government is not there to give us our rights.
Correct.
It's there to prevent the government from taking our rights.
And this goes back to philosophy. Yes. I don't believe the government doesn't bestow rights.
Right. I agreed.
God bestows rights. Government recognizes those rights in the Second Amendment, in our Bill of Rights, right? Those were some of the debates regarding the Bill of Rights generally.
Yeah.
And the debate really centered on both sides actually agreed that these were given by God. But one of them essentially said, well, if we do, in fact, enshrine these in the Constitution, then people will believe that these are the limited rights that they receive.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
And unfortunately, we've gone that direction.
Yeah.
That's the problem. These were just a recognition of some of the main rights that were given to us by God. I believe they were given to us by God. And all they were doing is reflecting that natural law, that true understanding of who we are as people. I'm not a product of the government. The government didn't create me. The government doesn't make me. The government doesn't turn me who I am. Right? All of those, I'm a reflection of the image and likeness of God, not government.
I'm a Christian. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Those are the beliefs that I hold to, but I also respect those who don't necessarily believe that. But I don't respect those that want to take away our guns.
Yeah. Well, especially
not that I have any.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially the people who want to take them away, and then also at the same time want to defund the police.
Right. On the guns thing, I want to be specific about this because these are questions that actually come up from the cannabis community. Regarding guns and cannabis in Arizona. Mm-hmm. What are your interpretation of how the law is written currently, and what would you do as the lead prosecutor running into that situation?
Obviously, there's issues of supremacy. So the law, there's a higher law.
Right.
So federal law is supreme to state law, and so based upon the current reading of the law, when you fill out a form when you want to go purchase a weapon, you have to disclose certain information.
Yes.
So those things again can be changed. But as far as I know, unless somebody is high, smoking marijuana, or drinking, whatever the case, or high on opioids, for that matter, then obviously they shouldn't be operating and using firearms during those times.
Right.
But otherwise, There shouldn't be any problems.
You can have your cannabis and you can have your guns
Absolutely.
at the state level.
Correct.
We got to be 100% clear on that.
Absolutely.
You get pulled over by a state officer, a deputy, a city police officer. You have your cannabis and you have your guns. It's allowed under state law.
Absolutely.
So-
But I also want to make sure people are not lying on federal forms either.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah.
And so I just had the conversation. I was at a thing with another lawyer this past week, and we were having the conversation about this. And it used to say, there's a very specific wording. It used to say on the form, "Are you addicted?"
Correct.
To blah blah blah. Yeah. It doesn't say that anymore. Have you seen the new form?
I have not.
It's very specific.
What does it say?
If you use medicinal cannabis at all under any circumstances, you are not allowed to purchase a firearm. They changed the wording, and again, this is just as of a couple of days ago. I looked this up. It used to say addicted to marijuana. Now it's very specific in its language, and it's very limiting in its language.
So here's the biggest question, and this goes back to my philosophy of government: is does the ATF have a right to change the form?
No.
Do we want federal bureaucracies?
Oh, sorry, that was my answer.
Yeah, absolutely. But think about this, and one thing that hopefully the viewers understand, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. But the reason why we have these executive level departments, do you understand the process of how they became about?
The laws?
No, the executive branch departments. So like the ATF.
No, I don't know the specifics.
So
I don't know the specifics.
I'll just walk you through it just
please.
briefly, really quick. So we obviously have three branches of government, which is set out in Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. We have a executive, legislative, and judicial branches. The executive branch is not allowed to make law. Their job is to enforce law. So my question is that if the ATF is an executive level branch, why are they making and changing law? Well, here's how they're doing it. The legislative branch has delegated their authority to the executive branch. My question is why? Where did they get that authority?
Right.
And so what we've done is we've created a true Leviathan that is controlling all of our lives. Because once the legislature delegates that authority to the executive branch, that department now becomes a legislative branch, a judicial branch, and an executive branch. How is that allowed under our Constitution?
What gives them the authority to do that?
Because they just did it.
Because nobody pushed back.
Nobody pushed
It
back.
was just like when the CDC started doing all their hullabaloo and all that stuff. It was like nobody gave you the authority to do that shit.
And then it continues and continues and continues.
No.
So now our legislature, instead of looking and reading all the bills that they're passing, remember you have to pass it before you can see what's in it, or instead of doing that and doing the hard work,
right,
they pass it off to the executive branch department. They make the decisions, like the CDC.
Yep.
They execute the operations. They criminalize the operations. And then if you want to appeal their decisions, you have to go through their department to appeal it.
And they've already made the rules.
They've already made the rules. So I think we need to start questioning of how we're conducting government. And this is the reason. It goes back to the ATF. The ATF has become an executive, legislative, and judicial branch in and of themselves. Do we want an executive branch department to have that kind of power?
Absolutely not.
Well, then the legislature needs to undelegate that authority.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about this.
Nobody's talking about that.
And this is happening not just on the federal level, but it's happening on the state level. Most of the rules and laws we fall under sit under the Arizona Administrative Code, which is a code designed specifically for those executive branch departments. Why is there an entire code for, to me, an unconstitutional delegation of authority that sits up there and makes all the decisions? Our water policies sit under there. DCS sits under there. How we conduct our foster homes sit under there. All of those issues sit in that register, that area, and we have no oversight of what's happening. Our only oversight is to go to the governor's office to get that change, or the attorney general's office. And if they're not listening, consumer rights issues, if they're not listening or don't want to prosecute, too bad.
That's insane. That's too much power.
That's what we're doing. That's how we're running our government.
And nobody's speaking up.
No, well, I don't think people understand.
They don't understand.
And I'm not condemning those who are listening, but it's complicated. And unless you've seen it and worked in government, then you don't understand how this whole process works.
I agree very much with that. It's very, very
It's all
confusing.
convoluted.
Yes.
It's super convoluted how it actually works.
Yes.
How do you appeal to this department or that department or whatever the case might be? But I've worked in this area for the past 15 years in the Marine Corps, worked through the DOD, DHS, all these various alphabet agencies. I've had to deal with cases involving all of these folks.
Yeah.
I know how it works. So I know where we can push and where we can't push, where we should spend our money and our time and where we shouldn't. And I think we need an advocate who understands that process. And I certainly do. And we certainly will be pushing back on some of these executive branch departments in making rules and judging those rules to protect individual rights, not the government, individual rights.
Awesome.
Yep.
I want to give you the time to think of anything else that you want to talk about, but I think we've covered a ton, and I can't say thank you and how appreciative I am of you giving me your time.
Absolutely. I would say the main things I want to make sure people know is I know this is the greatest country that has ever existed on the face of the planet. And I think we need to appreciate that and see that the founding fathers had enough foresight to add mechanisms so that we can change things to adapt to the times. But in the end, what they wanted was a strong government on certain things like defense.
Yeah.
But they wanted strong state governments to take the rest of the powers, which is why they created the 10th Amendment. All those things not enumerated, and that's the important part, is they didn't just say, here are the powers of the government. What they said was the people have only given the government the power that we've written down in words. The rest of it should be given back to the states or to the people. And I think we need to start getting and looking back to those constitutional ideals, that the power rests with the people unless specifically enumerated, written in a document. Thank you very much.
Take care, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.